did have an executive session. I apologize a little bit for holding you guys up. We had a lot of important things to talk about. It was over personnel, some legal issues. And, I guess at that point we called you for order. Everybody was right. Oh, I do the roll call. I do actually.
Mrs. Cozart? Absent. Mr. LaCasio?
Here.
Mrs. May? Here. Mr. Music?
Here.
Mr. Roberto?
Here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Dr. Zorch?
Here.
And Mr. Laser?
Here. Thank you.
I know it's worth it, Mr. President.
Well, thank you.
Not to put too fine
I
a
know you try to be sure about legislative report.
I will just report that there are 4 House bills regarding charter schools that are being considered and actually amended. But unfortunately, none of them deal with tuition costs that would benefit school districts across the state. Even though hundreds of school districts have passed a resolution asking for this to happen, it does not appear to be on the positive side for this session. So, some bad news. That's all I have. Thank you.
Education and planning, Mrs. Haynes.
Thank you. The enrollment report is first. Mr. Brent, anything to report?
No, it's attached to your review.
Okay, thank you. 2 service agreements. The first one for Lillian Heights for the 1920 school year will be an agenda item for your approval. And the Pennsylvania Educators Clearinghouse contract of service for the 1920 school year will also be an agenda item for approval. The tuition rates, of course, are set by the state. They are as listed, but we do need to approve them, so that will be an agenda item. We have another tuition student from Ligonier Valley for the 1920 school year, and that will be an agenda item. And 2 overnight field trips for your approval. The first one is the National Student Council Conference at South Fayette High School in McDonald, Pennsylvania, June 24th through June 26th of this year. And it tells you the advisors. And also the 2020 Spring Marching Band trip to Disney World and Universal Studios in Orlando. It costs $1,400 per student, but fundraising is available through the Band Parents Association. Those will be on the agenda next week for your approval. And the next curriculum committee meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 17th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. here in the CSC. Thank you.
I guess I'll be the finance report, Mr. Hodges. On the agenda will be, I'll just read them off there, the treasurer's report, payment of bills, approve the insurance renewal. Mr. Cassidy.
You want me to do it now?
Yes,
Your turn.
I can introduce, everybody already knows, Richard Cassidy is our insurance broker. Thank you for coming tonight, Richard. Provide us with a summary of our newest premium, so we appreciate it.
And it's good news. So we have a 22-page summary that we do for Dan. We've narrowed it down to 6 pages for the board. However, I'm not going to read the 6 pages. I'm just going to summarize it with some bullet points. First of all, as I said, the overall premium is down roughly 6.3% from last year. So I'll go over each item where the pluses and minuses are. Property and liability premium underwritten through the PSBA is down, or it's up 4%. So we had new appraisals done on all the buildings, added the new LES. The overall increase of the building value was 3.1%. As far as coverage remains the same as of last year. And there is a separate policy directly through the state with the mine subsidence because of the lower deductible. DEP offers a $0 deductible, whereas the PSBA program is $50,000 deductible. So there is a separate policy for the mines and sites. General liability coverage is the same. The main items that are through the PSBA, the standard general liability coverages, but also abuse and sexual molestation, the law enforcement liability, and that's for armed security, and then the violent incident coverage. So through the PSBA, if there is a violent incident like we all see on TV at schools, there is additional coverage. Coverage damage to the building, there is no deductible, whereas the standard deductible is $25,000. Funeral expenses, counseling, temporary staffing, alternate facility rental if the school needs to be closed, crisis management, and enhanced security. Those are just some of the items. And again, this is only exclusive to the PSBA program. The commercial auto coverage is the same. Premium is down 15%. Basically, 19 vehicles last year versus 16 vehicles this year. Got rid of some older vehicles and put on some newer vehicles. Workers' compensation. The overall decrease was 19%. Now, the experience rating, which is a 3-year history of the school district's claims, is down 8%, down to 0.90. 7 years ago, that factor was 1.533. So comparing apples to apples, the premium this year is $78,000. If that experience continued, the premium this year would have been $132,000. That's the benefit of having the safety committee, modified duty, return to work, and the additional changes that have been made. So again, apples to apples, the premium would have been $132,000 versus $78,000 because of bringing that claim experience down. The other factor was effective April 1st, UPMC lowered their rates. So again, lower experience modifier based on your claims and a rate reduction on April 1st. School leaders, again, through PSBA, and it's unique coverage offered through PSBA. Coverage is the same. Premium is down 4%. The benefits of the school leaders, the employment practice liability, employee-related claims, discrimination, termination, sexual harassment, hostile workplace, any of the administrative actions, civil rights violations, defense of IEP claims, the individual education program, those are all part of the PSBA program. The excess liability umbrella through the PSBA, again, same coverage as last year. This is covering over the general liability, the school leader's liability, law enforcement, auto, and the workers' compensation. So again, the premium on this one is down 1%. Usually if the underlying premiums go down on the liability, the umbrella premium will go down as well. Student and athletic accident, same price, same coverage, and there's been no price increase since 2016. The employee travel accident, same thing, same price, same coverage, and it's the second year of a 3-year policy. So again, 3 years, there's no rate change. There's one public official bond, and again, that's a $100 flat fee. It's the same, and that's just an annual renewable bond. The cyber coverage, and again, you see it on TV all the time, cyber liability, data breaches. So the program, same coverage as last year, same price as last year. This covers the liability for any cyber data breach exposure, covers the expenses to comply with any state, federal regulations regarding offering identity theft protection to any person who has been compromised. And also, which is rare among insurance, they cover the cost of the ransom. So there was a local school district that sent an email that they were hacked and it got into their server, it got into their backup server, and they had to pay the ransom. So this policy does cover the cost of the payment to a ransom, through Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. So that is covered. So in summary, last year, this year, the overall premium is down 6.3%, keeping the same coverages with the same carriers. Every year we go to different markets. The one area where we thought we would see some competition was on the workers' comp. So we went to Highmark, who was the last workers' comp carrier. We thought they would be the closest. They had since been purchased by another insurance company called Bridgestreet. So they knew what the pricing was, and they wouldn't even quote because of the pricing. They couldn't be competitive. So again, we're recommending all the same coverages as last year and all the same carriers. Any questions? And again, we have a detailed summary report, so if anyone wants details, feel free to contact me and I can go over any of the details of any of the coverages.
I don't have any questions, Rich, but I want to thank you for representing us over the years and doing a good job. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item will be on the agenda next week will be the adoption of the final operating budget. And Dennis will do the presentation. All right, Dan.
Zoom in on it. Can I sit in this chair?
Yeah, sorry, just taking a minute.
Okay.
Is it there? Is it?
Thanks for being nice to the old man.
Oh, there we go. That's perfect. I just hit the button too early. My fault. Okay, so I will try and keep this brief, but if you have any questions while I'm speaking, don't hesitate to stop me or see me after the presentation. Not a whole lot has changed since May, but I just wanted to just review it one more time for you so that when you're casting your vote at next week's meeting, you have the accurate information. We're looking at total expenditures of $57,085,874. There's been a decrease of about $20,000 from May. We've got the most up-to-date figures from the state for basic ed and special ed. We saw a reduction in funding of about $20,000, so we reduced our revenue expenditure line item. And in addition to, we received Mr. Cassidy's report that showed that we had over budgeted for workman's comp. It came in a lot lower than what I had anticipated. So I lowered the expenditure side to offset that as well. So we're looking at an increase of a little over $1 million. It's a 1.82% increase to our operating costs. So here are the summary of the expenditure changes. Wages went up by $411,000, roughly 1.72%. Healthcare, a little over $31,000, or 0.7%. Obviously, the largest increase is Peaser's retirement, went up $344,000, or 4.37%. Technology and curriculum both went up. But as I'll note later on, technology is going up, and we're going to be utilizing some of our undesignated, unassigned fund balance to purchase some additional computers. So that will actually bring that cost down. Same with curriculum. It went up $92,000 buying new science textbooks. Those are more expensive than some of the curriculum purchases that we've made in years past. So we'll be using a portion of our reserve account. And I'll speak to that a little bit further in the slides. Transportation, normally scheduled to go up by about 3%. That's contract states, it's only going up right around $60,000. We've been able to share some vans and some other transportation services with other school districts that has allowed us to control those costs a little bit more. Then business operations, reduction of $71,000 or 0.87%.
It's very short, Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
It's
I don't have any more for the presentation.
Open, just go down. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, don't worry, I won't start again. Hey, what button am I getting? Arrow? Because it's not going anywhere. Well, there we go. Okay, so we want to take a look at our expenditure history, not including Peaser's retirement. And we do this every year because I think it's interesting. 2009-10, our actual expenditures were $47 million, a little over $47 million. That, again, does not include Peaser's retirement. 2017-18, which is our most recent audited year, so this is per our audited financial statements, $48.5 million. And again, not inclusive of Peaser's retirement. That's a $1,389,000 increase, or 3% total increase over an 8-year period, which is roughly $173,000 per year average. So what I always identify those as, there are mainly controllable costs, things that we can make decisions with locally, and we can control those costs. So I think this slide here shows that we really do the best that we can. Every year I go through what Peaser's is, and I talk about there's no local control and state law and all those sorts of things. I'm not going to hit you with that again, but obviously, because it is state law and there is no local control, we have to live with it. But all the other expenditures, we've been doing a fairly well job of controlling those. So let's just look at our expenditure history with Peaser's retirement only. In 9-10, it was a little over $1 million, or 2% of our operating budget. In 2017-18, it's almost $7.5 million, or 13% of our operating budget. So over that 8-year period, it's increased by almost $6.5 million, or it's gone up by 634%. That is very significant, and obviously it has been very impactful to our overall budget. So let's flip gears and let's look at revenues. Local revenue, about $202,000. As I mentioned, we're very fortunate. The assessed value within our school district went up this past year, generates an additional $200-some thousand all by itself. We're very fortunate for that. State, $414,000. The majority of that is for Peaser's retirement, roughly $344,000 worth. Federal programs, about $62,000. Unfortunately, though, with federal programs, that's hit or miss. That's the most recent number that I've received. We could be halfway through next year and they could take that money from us. So federal programs is somewhat, like I said, hit or miss. In other areas, there won't be any change. So the total overall increase to our revenue is $679,000. Okay, so I wanted to take a look at how have we done over the last several years in regards to our revenue versus our expenditure budgets. The column to the left is the revenue column. The column to the right is the expenditure column. And then there's a small gray column at the bottom that shows if we operated at a surplus or deficit in that particular year. So in 2010-11, we operated at a surplus of a little over $1 million, which was within 1% of having a balanced budget. Okay? In 2011-12, we operated at a surplus of $405,000, which was about 0.43% of a balanced budget. In 2012-13, we operated at a slight deficit of around $91,000, and we were 0.09% within a balanced budget. 13-14, $495,000, surplus, 0.47% of a balanced budget. And then in 15-16, we operated at a $561,000 surplus, or a 0.52% of the balanced budget. So keep those numbers kind of in mind, because I'm going to talk about them in the bottom right here. Our three most recent years tell a little bit of a different story. In 2015-16, we operated at a deficit of about $1.4 million, which was within 1.35% of a balanced budget. In 16-17, a surplus of $620,000, which was 0.56% of a balanced budget. And then our most recent audited year, we operated at a deficit of $640,000, or 0.57% of the balanced budget. Now, we utilize our fund balance time to time, but we try and do it strategically, okay? I'm going to talk in future slides. Every year when I do the budget, I talk about what our expenditures look like, I talk about what our revenues look like, and then I make a recommendation to the full board about using a portion of our unassigned fund balance for one-time, non-recurring capital costs. And what I wanted to show here is, I did not note it up there, but over the most recent 3 years, we're looking at we've operated at a deficit of a little over $1.4 million. Well, that could be a red flag, but you have to go back and you have to look at the complete picture. So in this scenario, it goes back 8 years. In addition to, you have to go out and look forward. You always have to be forward thinking, looking out 3, 4, 5 years so we know what's coming. Our operational surplus has increased $920,000 over 8 years, or about $115,000 per year. So I would argue that we've been operating our budget fiscally sound, okay? Yes, I always want to operate at a surplus. There will be times that we operate at deficits. So for example, in 2015-16, we operated at a deficit because we knew we were entering into a new elementary building project, and we had to pay upfront architectural and other types of costs until the bond issuances were granted and we could refund ourselves. Okay, so there's always a story that goes behind it. We don't want to get too fat and hold too much money, but at the same time, we always want to be in the black and not in the red. And I think we've done that over the past 8 years, and I think we've done it at a reasonable level. So let's look, 18-19. The budget that we're currently in. We recommended using monies for equipment purchases for athletic, tech ed, and music. They totaled roughly $45,000. We also projected using money to balance our special education budget. Again, planned fund balance utilization of around $43,000. And then finally, debt service. We knew we had a higher debt service payment. We knew it was dropping off. We didn't want to spike up the budget, burden our taxpayers with an additional millage increase, so we used our fund balance, which we did this year, and we overspent it by about $515,000. That's planned, okay? So we anticipate operating at a deficit in 2018-19. 2019-20, again, we're making a similar recommendation. New textbooks, professional development, that goes back to what I mentioned earlier with the science curriculum. We're recommending that we use $103,000 for those one-time non-recurring costs, because when we have a 5-6 year rolling cycle for curriculum replacement, some programs are more expensive to replace and upgrade than others. So we want to try and maintain a level budget line item, recognizing that some years we'll need more and other years we'll need less. Next year we happen to need more. Technology equipment purchases. We recognize we have a larger refresh of our capital equipment that is required. So we're going to project using $90,000 so that we can continue our refresh and continue to provide the latest, greatest technology without, again, overburdening our taxpayers. And then we have additional one-year staff supports potentially needed at our kindergarten level, estimated about $110,000. So we utilize our undesignated fund balance for that as well. So some concerns I had, and I just wanted to highlight here because I think to be long-range thinking and to be able to plan. Our two largest budget line items are salary and benefits. Salary and benefits make up 69% of our expenditure budget. Okay? The 5-year average, Judy, should I make you read that?
No.
The 5-year average annual salary and benefit increase is about $900,000 per year, just for those two budget lines, okay? It only accounts for 50% of PESers. So what I did in this study is I recognized PESers, we get reimbursed 50% from the state, so I only included 50% of our PESers costs. And it is inclusive in that $900,000 per year. The 5-year average salary increase is 1.72% or $350,000 per year. Okay? That's really good. That's really low. It's concerning if you're looking long term, because how long are you going to be able to maintain a 1.72% annual salary increase? So I looked into it and I was like, well, how have we been so successful in controlling salaries? Well, we've offered 5 professional early retirement incentives over the last several years, which have resulted in 49 retirements, and we've been able to reduce our teaching staff from 277 down to 260. Okay, that's not. I don't think that we can sustain that over a long period of time. Okay, so we just went through a 5-year window where we were able to do certain things, restructure, take advantage of retirements, and reduce that particular budget line item. We now have young staff, so this trend may not continue. So that's a concern. We've got to keep thinking about that. Future annual salary increases project around 3% per year, assuming no retirements, no resignations. We just had a recent contract settlement. 3% is $700,000. Okay, so that really bumps up that annual salary and benefits that we need to be planning for. And I'm just bringing this to everybody's attention just to try to justify why my recommendation moving forward is what it is, and not trying to lose sight of what's coming down the road. So that's the expenditure side, where I identified the 2 largest expenditure line items. The 2 largest revenue line items are our local tax and our state subsidies. Okay? I'm not talking about gifts, grants, and donations. I'm talking about tax. It's real estate tax, earned income tax, LST, per capita, those things that we can count on year in and year out. State subsidies, we're talking about basic ed, special ed, transportation, rental, 87% of our budget. The 5-year average annual increase for these categories is $800,000 per year. Okay? Does not include any millage increase. This is just natural growth from the increase in the district's assessed values. It does not take into account any recent tax appeals that have been filed, or the potential loss of a tax appeal settlement. Okay? Does not include 50% PESER subsidy reimbursement. As you can see, with all of that said, that 5-year average annual trend results in a projected shortfall every year of $100,000. And I've already noted under salary and benefits, I think that $900,000 is light. I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see that number be a little bit higher. Okay, so we have to continue to think long term. And most importantly, this shortfall does not include special education, technology, curriculum, transportation, or facility needs. Okay, so if you just look at the 2 biggest budget line items on the expenditure side and the 2 biggest on the revenue side, we're already looking at a shortfall. Although it might be minor, it is worrisome, and I think that's why we have to be proactive and continue to look long term. So based on all this, my recommendation today would be to approve a final budget of $57,085,874. The millage impact would be 1 mil, which would take our millage rate to 82.25, and it would impact on the average homeowner $25 per year. That's what a 1 mil increase does to an average homeowner. So this final piece I just wanted to share with you. Westmoreland County's PESER's village impact. If you just want to do a comparative, in 2009-10, the highest village rate was 82.88, the low was 63.95, the average was 72.95, and Greater Lakes rate was at 69. And this most recent year, 18-19, the highest rate was 95.86, the lowest was 77.79, the average was 85.95, and GLSD was at 81.25, still under the average. And we are the 4th lowest, we have the 4th lowest millage rate in Westmoreland County. So I just think that, that's a lot of that obviously goes out to this board and the support that you guys have given in helping us to build these budgets and maintain these budgets and be more forward-thinking and not so short-sighted. So that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Dan, I do. I want to make sure I have the numbers right. We have a budget of about 57 million. You've said that over the last 8 years, your budgets have come within $115,000 of being balanced.
Yes.
So that would be 0.2% of being balanced.
Yeah.
Meaning putting it in numbers we might better grasp. If you were spending $1,000, you got that to within $2.
Yeah, it's
For every 1,000.
we've done a pretty good job of trying to meet our needs and not inflating our budgets. And we want to continue to do that. So
Thanks. I just want to make sure I had the numbers right.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. Hey, there are a bunch of different items on the agenda for your vote next week. And the first item following the final budget approval would be to approve the adoption of the 2019-20 millage levy. So once we get the support of the final operating budget, we'll have to adopt the final millage levy. Also to authorize the 2018 homestead farmstead exclusion amount. I shared with the Finance Committee earlier, we got around $750,000 again, which benefits all those eligible homestead farmsteads, about $1,135 reduction in assessed value, which equates to about a little over $93 in savings on the tax bills. And then in addition to that, we're going to reenact the Act 511 taxes for 1920, that's your earned income, your per capita 511, your LST tax, and your real estate transfer. And then the per capita 679 will also be reenacted. We'll ask the board to approve the extension of section 125 cash benefit cap. Once again, approve a natural gas purchase agreement for the commodity portion. That's actually decreasing based on what we're currently paying, so that's a good thing. As well as approve the natural gas purchase for the basis cost. Again, the basis cost is the cost to transport the natural gas from Pittsburgh to Lake Trobe. That is at a negative cost, and that's just because there's so much natural gas available in the pipeline. And then the only other thing on there is to approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes from May 14th. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Let's see. The next finance committee meeting will be Tuesday, August 13th. And under facilities and operation, we're going to approve the renewal of the elevator service contract with Eastern Elevator Services Sales Company. That will be on, these will all be on the agenda. Approve the proposal for the cafeteria floor replacement at Bagley Elementary with Dan Taylor Industries. We're going to approve the proposal for the athletic field rebuild at Rotary Park, Bagley Elementary, and Montview Elementary, and the athletic field approach. We do that. We're going to work on the proposal for tree removal, structural repairs. That'll be done at Montview Elementary playground, and the Marker Tree Experts will be handling that. The next facilities of operation planning meeting will have to be announced, but we did have a meeting on June 6th.
And I have a question. Where's that coming from? Is that budgeted this year already?
he's referencing all.
Yeah, this is our capital reserve fund. So yes, yep, it's part of that 5-year rolling capital plan. And Kurt's identified some of those projects. So,
Thank you. That's a good question. Thank you. Student activities of recreation, Mrs. May.
Thank you. On your agenda next week for approval will be a resolution to approve the regular Trove Senior High School Science National Honor Society chapter as a school club, and the advisor would be Jackie Hoops.
Community relations, Dr. George.
First of all, I can't tell you how many times I've had poor relations in my life. Your record. Patience. On the agenda will be the free and reduced price meal policy, the National School Breakfast Program, the National School Lunch Program. Those will be on the agenda for approval next meeting. And the Greater Latrobe Parks and Rec Commission meeting minutes from April 18th are on the agenda as well. There's an attachment. The next meeting for those guys is June 20th.
Can I make a note? They just canceled this month's meeting due to lack of a quorum, so there will not be a meeting on June 20th. So if you're interested in attending, you'll have to find something else to do that.
Relationless. Damn it.
That's part of the intermediate unit, Mrs. May.
Yes. Thank you. Summary of the WAU board meeting minutes from the meeting on May 28th are attached. And the next WIU committee meeting will be Tuesday, June 25th at 7 p.m. in the board meeting room with the WIU.
Thank you, Mrs. May. The joint operating committee, well, we have the minutes for the meeting.
Oh, that's okay, no worries.
I wasn't thinking about it. Okay, don't ever get old. My fault. I apologize.
No worries. The EWCT Joint Operating Committee meeting minutes from May 22nd are attached to the board's agenda, and the next EWCTC Joint Operating Committee meeting will be on Wednesday, June 26th at 7 o'clock at the EWCTC building.
Thank you. I apologize. And, don't tell her that board policy, Mrs. Baines.
Yes, thank you. On your agenda next week will be 4 policies, and they are all attached there for you to take a look at. Most of them are small changes, so they will be on for about first reading next week.
Thank you, Mrs. Technology, Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I would ask you to approve the EduLink Incorporated compliance software agreement for the 2018-2020 year. And our next meeting is Tuesday, October 15th, here at CSC at 5:30 p.m. Thank you.
Superintendent's recommendations to follow.
Next week, we would ask the board to approve resignations. Jim Feather has worked for the district for many years, central receiving. He will be resigning for retirement. Added, if you have a written agenda, we just received a resignation from Mary Edwards, classroom assistant at the high school for retirement, as well as Michael Ferguson from girls basketball and Kaylee Burkhardt, girls volleyball. Next week, we will be asking the board to move on the hiring of 3 elementary education teacher replacements and 3 special education. 2 of those are replacements. 1 would be the additional autistic support teacher that is part of the budget that Mr. Watson presented. Also, we would have names for the girls tennis head coach and the golf JV coach next week for approval. In addition would be the annual resolution, which gives the superintendent permission to realign staff. In addition, next week will be the teacher leader positions and salary They will be attached for your review, as well as the classified personnel hourly rates of pay effective July 1st, 2019. You can see the comparison from 1819 to 1920 for those particular positions. And in addition, on an annual basis, we approve our on-the-road driver education instructors for 1920, and they include the 5, and they have been working in this capacity for several years. Just a note, last evening at Ottawa, we had our school picnic, and at 6 o'clock, we had the annual tradition of having a selection of ticket numbers to give out prizes. Just want to put a shout out to Dorothy Alshouse, who did a wonderful job collecting dollars from the community people. She collected over $4,000, and there were quite a few really wonderful prizes for our parents and community members. Unfortunately, the weather did not exactly cooperate, but there were many people there who really enjoyed the time. So we appreciate her help, as well as all of the community members that come out for that annual event. Next week is our regular voting meeting, which is Tuesday, June 18th. As you probably are aware, we do not have a board meeting scheduled in July, and so our regularly scheduled meetings would be Tuesday, August 13th, as well as Tuesday, August 20th for the regular board meeting in August. That's all I have.
Thank you for pointing out this. I apologize if I said no. Call for it, sir.
Thank you. Thanks. I know it was a lot.